This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America 4 this Monday morning. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining me. Coming up a little bit later on today's show, Mike Penna from the Horse Racing Radio Network, as noted. Mike, a regular visitor here, and typically looks at some of the stakes action from the past weekend. That's the game plan this morning. Also a little later on, Frank Vespi from the RacingBiz.com website that takes a look at racing news from the Mid-Atlantic region. He's going to recap the four nice stakes races from Laurel that were held on Saturday with us. I want to go back to a news story. Mentioned it yesterday on Loose on the Lead, but I always, when I come in here on Monday, there's some stories I think are worth folding over, just in case, folks may be out and about on Sundays and are more tuned into the weekday show. So a couple of stories worth maybe touching back on again. And I did want to mention just the tragic incident at Belmont Park on Saturday. Cash Electronica killed in a training accident down there. It really, really unfortunate. And again, it had to be the nightmare scenario. There was a horse called Six Drivers out on the racetrack working out. Six Drivers came out of the gate and reared, dumping exercise rider Julio Pazua. Six Drivers subsequently got loose and went the wrong way on the racetrack and wound up colliding with Cash Electronica. Both horses died. Really an unfortunate incident. The exercise rider that was on board Cash Electronica has to go in for some surgery. A fractured pelvis, will require some reconstructive surgery on his face. And again, this is always unfortunate. Mike Rapoli, the owner, said it. The owner of Cash Electronica, always tragic, but when it happens to Cash Electronica, it amplifies things. And that's the truth. Cash Electronica is a horse that we all kind of latched onto. If you watch racing regularly, this was a horse that was claimed by Rapoli and Pletcher probably a couple of years ago at least, maybe more, for $62,000 down at Gulfstream. Subsequently went on to win, I think, about $1.5 million, won the Charlestown Classic in 2012. Just became one of the all-time great claims and was out there. Always a hard knocker, always running very competitively. Last was seen in the fall high weight at the end of November, ran fourth in there. And just, boy, it was really, again, a tragic incident. We had Jeff Carl on the Handicappers Report with me yesterday. Of course, Jeff, a retired jockey. I was talking to him a little bit about it's got to be the nightmare scenario. And certainly jockeys in the afternoon, that's a very dangerous profession. But in the morning, it may be more dangerous. As Jeff said, you go out in the morning, and there's some mornings where there's just all kinds of traffic out there and all kinds of horses. And it's just a fact of the game, and these kind of accidents can happen. But boy, it really took the wind out of everybody, I think, with Saturday morning. Again, Cash Electronica, kind of a tragic fatality on the racetrack due to an accident. Another story that we touched on yesterday, a little more upbeat, thankfully. We mentioned the Eclipse Awards yesterday, and I just wanted to touch on that again for folks who, as I say, may have missed Sunday's programming, could be out and about on Sundays. But they have announced the Media Eclipse Awards towards the end of the last week. They dribbled out over the last couple of days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The photo eclipse was announced, and I think we have a little shot of that. The photo eclipse winner this year was Jamie Radosevich Hernandez. She is married to jockey Brian Hernandez. She formerly worked as an assistant to Steve Asmussen and Steve Margolis. Took this picture, evening picture down at Churchill Downs. It's 2012 Horse of the Year, Wise Dan, John Velasquez on board, approaching the finish line in the Firecracker Handicap. Subsequently, this photo appeared in both USA Today and the Courier Journal. A little bit of rain coming down as she was on the inside of the course. The raindrops were picked up by the lights at Churchill, and almost has a snow effect. But of course, this was back in June, so that is rain. But it's a nice picture, and it kind of veers a little bit from my partner Steve Bick and I were talking yesterday. Typically, over the past 10 years or so, there have been a few pictures of steeplechase horses with riders falling off. There was the Leparoux picture of Julien Leparoux falling off the horse. We go back a ways. There was the two pictures of Frankie Dettori doing his flying dismount at the Breeders' Cup. That was a very similar picture in two different years. So it's nice to see something a little bit different. It was a nice picture. And as I say, kind of a fun story with a backstretch person turned photographer now, and again, married to married to jockey Brian Hernandez as well. Jamie Radosevich Hernandez wins the 2013 Eclipse Award for photography. We mentioned it a few minutes ago on the Handicappers Report. Hats off to our buddy Marty McGee, who wins the Eclipse Award in the feature writing category for an article that was in the Racing Forum titled "For Desormeaux, Conflicting Views of His Struggles." It was published on April 20th. I'm sure you can still go to the Racing Forum, go into the archives, and read it. It is a great chronicle of Kent Desormeaux, and the guy who has a lot of talent but has had some problems along the way, and interviews with racetrackers, and interviews with Desormeaux's family. When the article came out, we talked a lot about it on the air. It was really had some great buzz in the industry. Folks kind of were aware this was a special and good article, so hats off to Marty McGee for winning the Eclipse Award for his Desormeaux piece. Marcus Hirsch won in the News Enterprise category for an interview with Renee Douglas. It was an interview on his first visit to a racetrack since he was paralyzed in the racing accident at Arlington in 2009. That was a nice piece as well. So a couple of Racing Forum writers win Eclipse Awards. In the multimedia category, the New York Times piece on Russell Bays. And again, I have links to press releases and articles about these media eclipse winners over on Equidaily. And if you link to the one about the New York Times piece, it also has the link to the New York Times piece. If you haven't seen it, it's great. This multimedia category is really meant for something like this, in that you go to the article and there are pictures and audio and video and an article. It was written and narrated by Barry Barak, and he states in the press release that he really was unfamiliar with horse racing beforehand, so he came with fresh eyes, did a profile of Russell Bays that was simply called The Jockey. Nice multimedia piece from the New York Times. Going back to mid-August was when it first appeared. But as I say, there's a link in the press release article that gets you right to it. It's worth going back and checking if you haven't already seen it. Over on the TV side, I think we might have mentioned this last week. HRTV wins for that documentary of Warhorse. NBC wins for their broadcast of the Kentucky Derby. So the Media Eclipse Awards have been handed out. They're handed out because they're a little bit different in that the Eclipse Awards themselves, the human, the equine categories, trainer, jockey, 3-year-old, et cetera, go out and are voted on by racetrack administrators, press people, obviously. And so there's a couple of hundred voters, 300 voters, whatever it is. These Media Eclipse Awards have panels, though. Typically, I think there's 3 people that are selected to be on the various panels in these categories, and those 3 people, judge these particular Media Eclipse Awards. So it's just a little bit of a different process. That's why they come out a little bit early. Article in the Ocala Star Banner notes that Marion County in Florida now may be the home to a brand new quarter horse track. All the papers have been filed. Construction is scheduled to begin later this year. Again, this will be a quarter horse track, but it was interesting reading the article in the Ocala Star Banner. Florida statutes say anyone who holds a pari-mutuel license and runs horse races is also eligible to operate card rooms. That looks like it's going to be the game plan. We've seen this over probably the last 10 or 15 years where states are allowing slots or alternative gaming like these card rooms, which then prompts, and they allow them at racetracks, and then prompts some new racetracks to open up. I'm not quite sure that's what is the best use of this slots money. You know, when slots and horse racing were tied together, I don't think the game plan was to be, let's just open up some new tracks so we can attach slots or card rooms to them. So we'll see what happens down in Florida now. Again, this is quarter horse racing, not thoroughbred racing. How will this affect racing in the state of Florida? I don't know. but it'll just be interesting to see what this track does, because the article further goes on to say there are restrictions in Florida laws for slots that are tied to thoroughbred racetracks, and the restrictions say certain percentages of slots money have to go to the thoroughbred game. There aren't the same restrictions when it comes to quarter horse racing. So some of the quarter horse people are a little bit concerned whether this will be done in the best way possible, or whether it's just meant to open up a card room and siphon off that money, and then the quarter horse racing will be a forgotten stepchild. But again, you can read more about that. The Ocala Star Banner have that article linked at Equidaily as well. Another article I wanted to tout people on, and I meant to bring it up last week, and I didn't get a chance because it came out Thursday. T.D. Thornton, who based up in the New England area, written about horse racing. He's got some books out. He does some nice work, but he had a fun article in the Racing Forum, kind of racing history. If you like that kind of thing, it's called The Lady in Red, A Story of a Woman and Bridge Jumpers. It opens up by saying, it was the war-weary summer of 1944 when a mysterious dark-haired pixie, barely 4 feet 10 in heels, asserted herself as a towering presence at the Rockingham wagering windows. And it goes on to profile this lady, who they eventually called the Lady in Red. They had some other nicknames for her as well. But she was a bridge jumper. She was one of the first bridge jumpers, was out there betting large sums of money and typically collecting as well. There was a rumor that she was a Robin Hood, stealing from the racetracks with these negative pools and giving to the poor, and subsequently they looked into it and found out that wasn't necessarily the case. But it's just a fun article, again, looks at this whole story behind the Lady in Red, who back in the mid-40s was making bomb show bets up on the New England circuit, Rockingham in particular. The Lady in Red, A Story of a Woman in Bridge Jumpers, written by T.D. Thornton, available on the Daily Racing Forum. Again, have that link as well over at Equidaily, so you can check that out. And that's one I just kind of recommend. News over the past couple of days, also worth taking a look at. The year-end money for racing nationwide has come out. The Equibase statistics were put out not only for the month of December, but for year-end 2013. December, not good. December numbers, wagering in the United States in December was down over 10%. Number of racing days down about 3.5%, so that certainly affected it. And I wonder, when I looked at these numbers, but down 10% is pretty significant. So the wagering in December took a big hit. But you know what? I wonder how much Parx played into that. I mean, Parx is a fairly significant track, and they lost, I believe, 10 days in December. That's a significant hit on the landscape, you would have to think. So I'm wondering if Parx and their weather troubles didn't play into this. We also mentioned earlier on the Handicappers Report the trouble Fairgrounds had with some of their turf racing. That certainly probably took a hit, because turf racing normally will juice up your figures a little bit as well. Although Fairgrounds last year had similar problems, but I'd like to compare maybe December to December with Fairgrounds and their turf racing. There could be some weather-related things that may have affected that 10% number. But that was December. Looking at the year-round figures, though, 2013 versus 2012, national wagering numbers up incrementally, up 0.06%, but that's with racing days down over 3%. So I think balancing those two numbers, the number of races down, but the number of wagering up, and the number of races down significantly more than wagering went up, I think that's a pretty good sign. As I say, you balance those numbers out in the equation, that 0.06% maybe looks a little bit better, but it's still a positive sign. It's not a big move forward, but it is a move forward, particularly when you roll in the 10% the national wagering numbers took a hit on in December. So, up incrementally, but I think there is certainly some reason to be optimistic about those wagering numbers year-end 2013. Mentioned it earlier on the Handicappers Report. Do want to reiterate, though, if you were playing Aqueduct yesterday, the final race was canceled. The tractor broke down, had some kind of a transmission issue. They tried to move the tractor off the track. What happened was they ran into daylight issues, and there is a law that New York Racing cannot run after sunset. The timing of sunset came up against them, so they did have to cancel the last race yesterday. That had an effect on the pick plays. Essentially, the last race became an all in the various pick plays. Obviously, on the last race itself, they refunded, win, place, show, and exactas and whatnot. But on the pick plays, that last race yesterday at Aqueduct became an all. Now, the other significant note there is that yesterday was a carryover in the pick six, but New York state law says if all the races in the sequence aren't run, the carryover doesn't get paid. So they paid on the money that was put into the pool yesterday, but the carryover figure now goes to the next racing day at Aqueduct, and that's Thursday. Again, they won't be back until Thursday. They ran an extended week this week from New Year's Eve Tuesday until yesterday. They come back on Thursday and kick off their brand new winter schedule down at Aqueduct Thursday through Monday. So they will be back Thursday. There will be a carryover, and again, that carryover is due to the situation in the last race yesterday at Aqueduct, which was canceled because of mechanical difficulties. So that was, if you played yesterday, that was the situation. Just want to note also, our little article in the Blood Horse yesterday, Freud, who is the New York-based stallion, brother to Giants Causeway. Freud, and if you play New York races and New York bred races, certainly you see Freud's name in plenty. He is one that you have to pay attention to in those New York bred races. I didn't realize it, but he's been a shuttle stallion and spent some time down in the southern hemisphere in Argentina. Well, he had his first Argentinian winner, 2-year-old named Tiffany Blue, won a race down in Argentina on January 3rd. So Freud, the New York-based stallion, now internationally, he's getting it done. Had a winner down in Argentina just a couple of days ago. All right, that's going to bring us to our break. Take our first break. When we come back, it's going to be Mike Penna of the Horse Racing Radio Network for a little stakes recap. Stay tuned.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the action is just around the corner. A full list of our branch and easy bet locations can be found online at capitalotb.com. Capital OTB, the better and most convenient choice for wagering in upstate New York.
Wagering at CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
I'm Anthony Moreno. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America for this Monday morning. Monday morning means a regular visit from Mike Penna of the Horse Racing Radio Network. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Seth. Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Very good. And always like to touch on Horse Racing Radio Network and what has been going on there. I saw you had an interview late last week with Leah Giarmati. Also give us a little update on what Trainer Talk was all about last week so people can suss it out in the archives if they're interested.
Yeah, obviously this is a bit of a slower time for us in terms of our racing coverage. That'll start heating up again in the middle of the month when we bring coverage of the Sunshine Millions from Gulfstream Park. That's going to be a lot of fun. But yeah, in terms of the interview with Leah Giramatti, she talked about Noble Moon going into that race this weekend, and it was interesting to hear her say that, you know, this was very much a stepping stone for him and trying to determine if he is Derby quality. That's what a lot of the trainers are trying to do now, and that's what she wanted to find out with him in the Jerome, and we'll talk about that race in a minute. In terms of trainer talk, Jamie Ness joined me this past week along with a replay of our interview with David Canizzo. Both of those so much fun, and always fun to catch up with all these trainers.
Yeah, David, a brother to Jeff Canizzo, who's one of the main players in the New York breeding program out here, so he's always interesting to pay attention to down on the New York scene. Mike, let's take a look at some of that stakes action and look back at that Jerome. There was some nice 3-year-old stakes action. I think all of the races, I said this earlier, I think all of the races, going back to the Gulfstream Park Derby even on Wednesday, but then including what we saw around the country on Saturday, kind of barometer races. I don't know if we had any real superstars out there, but I think it was the kind of race, like you mentioned with Leah Giramatti, where folks were just seeing what they had, and if a good enough performance was to be seen, move forward a little bit. We'll get you some of your opinions on potentially who might move forward out of the Jerome. We got the stretch run here from Saturday's Jerome, Grade 2 event, $200,000 purse down at Aqueduct. I'm going to tell people, look on the rail at Scotland. I thought right about here, Scotland was going to be really interesting for Tony Dutrow in the third career start. I just wonder if that one was just maybe a little green and didn't want to go through. I want to see Scotland one more time. Does hold on nicely for third, but Noble Moon, gutsy performance to hold off Scotland on the inside and Classic Jack and Roll on the outside. All the top three, not superstars, but I think all top three are horses I'll be willing to look at going forward.
Yeah, I think so, and it's interesting that you would bring up Scotland because here's a horse that, keep in mind, was still a maiden going into this Grade 2 race on Saturday, had finished second in each of his first 2 starts, and this was his first time going 2 turns off of 2 sprint races. So there were a lot of things to like about his performance. He did look as if at one point coming to the top of the stretch, he was going to be the one to sneak through and give Noble Moon a real battle down the stretch and maybe even run away from that horse. But like you said, maybe some immaturity, still kind of learning the game. Keep in mind, these horses are very, very young. They're still learning, and they're going to be learning all the way through the Kentucky Derby. But Scotland, very impressive in defeat. In terms of the winner, Noble Moon, it was nice to see him get a test because he wasn't tested in his debut so much. I know he had that 1-length lead just about all the way around the track and went wire to wire back in September at Belmont Park and held on. In the Nashua, never really had a chance to run his race after a bad beginning. But on Saturday, he was tested a little bit in the Jerome by Classic Jock and Roll on the outside, who really dug in nicely, and it was a game effort from him. And it was good to see Noble Moon be able to send him off and to continue to run on with some competition running at him. So a workmanlike effort. I don't know if I was overly impressed with anybody in here, but maybe one to keep an eye on moving forward could be a horse like Scotland.
Yeah, and Noble Moon, Giamatti has said there are probably 2 more starts. One of those will be the Woods, so now she's looking at either the Withers or the Gotham as the other start. Probably going to choose between one or the other of those. As I said, I'd like to watch all top 3 of these and see what they do next time out. I don't know whether there's any real definitive performances with the 3-year-olds over the weekend, but I think, again, some connections probably got at least a little bit of an encouragement to, as I say, see what we get next time out, continue on testing the waters a little bit. Let me, before we move on to the other stakes races, just get some of your thoughts and see if anything jumped out at you as far as the 3-year-old picture going back to the Gulfstream Park Derby. It was General A-Rod. We had Jeremy Plonk on yesterday, who put the Countdown to the Crown magazine together, and I asked some of his opinions from Saturday. He liked Mighty Brown from Tampa Bay. I thought Mighty Brown was kind of interesting as well. And, of course, Just Call Kenny in the upset at Gulfstream yesterday in a spectacular bid. But if you tie in Just Call Kenny and Germaniac in the stakes race over at Laurel on Saturday as well, they tie in through joint custody. And we talked about this one before. Joint custody to me may be interesting. Won the stakes race last week at Laurel, but if they test the waters outside of Maryland with that one, joint custody could be interesting as well. But was there any 3-year-old action that really piqued your interest over the weekend?
There really wasn't. It was kind of like you alluded to in the beginning, Steph. Everybody seemed to run good races, solid races, but nothing that would blow you away, but nothing that would discourage you if you happen to like one of the horses that won this weekend either, or even a couple of the horses that finished behind the winners in those 3-year-old races. And take it a step further, Noble Moon, beaten last time out in the Nashua by Cairo Prince, who we saw come back and run that bang-up race to Honor Code in a really funky race last year. And you have to wonder now if that flatters the form, or if maybe it doesn't flatter the form of those two, because it's not like Noble Moon blew the field away in the Jerome, but he didn't disappoint either. It was a good effort. So it's all how you interpret these performances, and so much will be determined over the next couple of starts, obviously. But I think the next step for each of these horses will be very, very important to see who really is for real moving forward.
Yeah, it's interesting now with 21st century training. A lot of these trainers now they're looking for 2 starts before the Derby. So some of the big guns we won't see for a while. We are just in that sorting out period for the folks who maybe have the B teams and want to see if they can move up and take the A team. So I agree with you. There were some interesting performances, as I say, the 3 out of the Jerome, Mighty Brown, but nothing that knocked my socks off by any means. All right. Let's shift our attention now. I wanted to show this race to viewers from Saturday, the Marshalls River on the grass down at Gulfstream Park. Grade 3 event, a $100,000 purse, mile and a 16th on the grass. We're going to watch the stretch run. I liked Abaco in here. That one is the number 12 horse. So at the top of the stretch, Lewis is the 5-2 choice. And then just Abaco just didn't have enough oomph in the stretch to get up there. But number 6, Naples Bay, does get up under Joe Bravo, who's riding pretty well down at Gulfstream. 8-1 though, and I wanted to show this race because it just goes to show the old horse for the course angle. This horse was 2 for 2 over the track prior, winds up winning, going 3 for 3, and again at 8-1, some nice value with a horse that had proven itself over the track before, and then running second, Somali Lemonade. And I'll just note that one because these are the bane of my handicapping existence. Horses that just, on any given day, they can run up there and put in a good performance. You just don't know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, and Naples Bay had the class to win this race, certainly. This was a Grade 3 race, the Marshalls River. Naples Bay, a Grade 3 winner, having taken the Noble Damsel at Belmont in 2012. She wasn't going to be discouraged when she faced this type of competition, Seth. She was coming out of 6 Grade 3 events in a row, so it was no shocker to her to face this type of competition. And you mentioned her 2 wins at Gulfstream. They actually came in her first 2 starts of her career all the way back in 2011. So here's a 6-year-old mare returning to the track that she was undefeated on. So horse for course, definitely, but you had to go back a ways to find it. She turns the tables on Angelica Zapata, who I loved in this race. I thought she was undoubtedly the one to beat. She ends up finishing a very close third. But give credit to Joe Bravo. He saved ground with Naples Bay, which is always a good thing to do on the turf, and then had everything break his way. We hear that with Calvin Borel a lot when he likes to hug the inside fence, and sometimes you're a hero, sometimes you're a goat, and Joe Bravo was the hero this time because coming to the quarter pole, he got the opening he needed, and then as they turned into the stretch, was able to run through that seam, as Larry Coleman said in his call, and drew off to win. So a nice ride from Joe Bravo. He got everything to break his way, and Naples Bay obviously has an affinity for this Gulfstream turf.
Yeah, absolutely, and I just wanted to show that one, as I say, and a couple of horses that were interesting. Naples Bay horse for a course, Somali Lemonade, who, as I say, had just a complete handicapping puzzle. Abaco may have been compromised a little bit by the outside post position. Certainly that didn't help at all, but it was a really kind of a fun, competitive race. Now let's shift our attention out to Santa Anita on Saturday, and I wanted to show this one. Talked about this horse earlier on the Handicappers Report. With what I do, I'm watching races from all across the country. So I go back a few years ago when I thought Lava Man should have gotten recognition as Horse of the Year. I'm a guy who California racing is on my radar screen. I think for a lot of people, some very nice horses kind of float under the radar because it is out in Southern California. And I think going back to the San Gabriel on Saturday, we have one of those. Geronimo may be one of those horses, one of those very good horses that a lot of people just aren't really familiar with. But Geronimo wins the San Gabriel for the third time, and not third in a row. This is the third time in the last 4 years, and bookended in there was a second-place finish. It is number 9 in here, Geronimo getting it done under Rafael Bejarano, who was winning the race for the 6th consecutive time. But I bring this horse up, Mike, again, just a horse that folks may not be super familiar with, but this put this horse over $1.5 million, Grade 1 winner. Geronimo, really a special horse.
Yeah, undoubtedly, and he was the old man among this group, an 8-year-old, still a full horse, which is great to see, a son of Congaree, and you mentioned the $1.5 million in earnings. He might be racing's top millionaire that you never hear anything about because he does definitely fly under the radar. He was the defending champ in the San Gabriel, having won it in very similar fashion last year, coming from far back. He lagged behind in a 7-horse field, did the same thing this year, and then kind of catapulted past the field in the stretch. And a nice effort for him, picking up his 11th win and now 39 lifetime starts. And great to see these horses stick around and compete at the top of the game. You know, so many times we see horses leave the sport too early because of the economics of the industry. But here's Geronimo, 8 years old, still competing at the highest level, and a horse that obviously loves the game, and you always want to give those horses every chance.
Yeah, it definitely should be a lot of fun following this horse again through this year. As you say, comes back, and those are always fun. And Mike, let me ask you what you're looking forward to in 2014. Speaking of that, certainly to me it seems like it's going to be fun. We'll take charge. I'm thrilled he's coming back. We had Mike Welch on with us yesterday, and he said he talked to Buff Bradley, and Groupie Doll may have a start coming up, so that'll be a lot of fun. Wise Dan, we'll look forward to some more from him. I think this past year we had some of these horses coming back. I'm thinking with the auctions turning around, maybe the economics are getting to the point where, again, we'll see some horses making what we would like to consider premature retirements. But for the last couple of years at least, we've had, and going into this year, I'm including that, it looks like we're getting some horses coming back that are going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. Mucho Macho Man, the Breeders' Cup Classic winner, also getting ready to return to the races. So, a lot of things to look forward to there. And of course, you know, whenever you start turning the calendar to the new year, you automatically start thinking Kentucky Derby. Of course, I've been in that Derby frame of mind for the past month or so, and really looking forward to starting our coverage and heading down that road to Louisville. We're going to be providing the exclusive national broadcast of the Kentucky Derby for the 4th consecutive year, and we'll have all the major prep races on the network as well. So anxious to get started on that and make our way down the road to the Triple Crown.
And let me ask, we alluded to it earlier as we talked about the 3-year races over the weekend, but is there anyone you're hanging your hat on at this point? I'll say a horse that won for the second time in 2 starts, going back a couple of weeks ago down at Fairgrounds for Steve Asmussen. Gold Hawk, to me, is one that I'm finding a little bit interesting right now. Anybody standing out to you?
You know, there really isn't, Seth. It's to me right now, and I've made my Derby selection on January 1st more than once over the past several years because I always seem to fall in love with a 2-year-old that is flashy and looks the part and has the pedigree. And that's gotten me in trouble more times than not when it comes to betting on the first Saturday in May because I tend to bet with my heart than with my head. But no, as of right now, I really have not put my finger on any one individual horse. It looks to me like there's an awful lot of parity among the now turned 3-year-olds, and it's going to be interesting to see who makes that wow performance and makes that splash performance over the next couple of starts, and we start saying, you know, like Verrazano last year, here's the horse that could be, you know, the horse to beat, and then Orb comes along and puts an end to all that. So, a lot to be determined, and I'm going to take the wait-and-see approach for right now.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And once again, just remind people, Horse Racing Radio Network live racing coverage for 2014 starts up when?
Our live racing coverage will pick up again January 18th with the Sunshine Millions, and then we'll be back with our road to the Kentucky Derby at the end of February with the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream.
You going to pop over to the Eclipse Awards ceremony?
No, actually, I think we're going to be hosting the coverage from in studio. I'm not sure we're actually going to be on site for that one, for the Sunshine Million. So we'll probably have an on-site correspondent down there, and so I'm sure they'll get an opportunity to pop into the Eclipse Awards.
And I was talking earlier, just get your opinion. I went through the Media Eclipse Awards at the top of the show. I thought it was a really great bunch. I certainly think Marty McGee, for his piece on DeSormo, that was incredible and certainly deserved it. HRTV documentary of Warhorse, that's right up the road from us, and it seems like they're doing some good work, as well as some of the other awards. I really thought the Media Eclipse Awards were done very well this year.
Yeah, I thought every winner was very deserving in every single category. The New York Times for winning it in the category that we submit to here on the Horse Racing Radio Network. That piece that they did on Russell Bays was outstanding. So congratulations to them. And again, Marty McGee, he joined me Saturday morning on our Equine Forum show to talk about that outstanding piece that he did on Kent DeSormo and his struggles and his life and his background. And that interview, by the way, with Marty is on our homepage right now at horseracingradio.net. It's Marty's first Eclipse Award, which I couldn't believe because he's been turning out good work and great work in the sport with racing for him for so long. And then to hear that it was his first one was a bit surprising.
Yeah, and just before I let you go, I will say, I think we got to make a push for the Eclipse Award people to separate that multimedia from radio, because that is apples and oranges if there ever was.
Well, it's funny. I used to say the same thing, but then we won it in 2010, so I can't say that anymore.
There you go. So it all works in the end. All right, Mike, certainly appreciate the visit. Again, folks can check out all the great archive work at the Horse Racing Radio Network website, as well as picking up the live programming as the week goes along. Mike, thanks for the visit. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Seth.
All right, Mike Penna, Horse Racing Radio Network. Take our next break. TheRacingBiz.com's Frank Vespi right after this.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB Bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today. Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
And welcome back to Racing Across America, joined now by Frank Vespi of TheRacingBiz.com. Good morning, Frank.
Hey, Seth. Good morning.
And Frank, we're going to take a look at some of the Laurel Stakes action from Saturday in just a moment. Before we do, just once again, we've had you on the show plenty of times before, but for folks who maybe aren't tuned in on some of those occasions, just give a little overview of TheRacingBiz.com.
Sure, thanks. The Racing Biz is let's try that again in English. It's a website focused on the sport, business, and personalities of racing and breeding in the Mid-Atlantic region. So we're covering the sport in Maryland, Pennsylvania, Delaware, New Jersey, Virginia, and West Virginia. And we're focused on the racing and the breeding and the people and the business end of the business in that region.
And just to give a little bit of your background, you have been, I'm not sure, you have been a horse owner in the past. Do you own any horses currently?
I don't, actually. I owned a horse. The last horse that we owned got claimed away from us just about a year ago. She broke her maiden at Gulfstream and got claimed out of that race. So our wallet finally cried uncle, and I had to take a little break. So that's what we're doing.
Very good. But you were racing horses mainly in the Maryland-based region, correct?
Yeah. We ran horses ourselves and also ran some partnerships as that's a Moray stable, and we're mostly based in Maryland. We ran some, sort of all over the region, as well as a few in Gulfstream and Calder. So we were kind of here and there, but probably about half of our starts were in Maryland. And I've got to say, it was great fun. For anybody considering taking a plunge, it's great fun, and it was tremendous, and we'll do it again. Sometimes you need to take a little break, though.
Yeah, and the old axiom is that whether it's the Kentucky Derby or the fourth race on a Thursday at Laurel, there's just as much excitement if you're the owner.
It's really true. And a funny experience I had a few months ago, I went to talk to a trainer at Laurel, and she had just had a horse win a stake, and I thought she'd be very excited because it was a horse that had sort of been in bad form and now it's coming back to better form. And all she wanted to talk about was this 5,000 claimer that they had that had just won. And, it's a neat experience, and there's just no feeling in your day-to-day life quite like seeing your horse on the lead in the stretch.
And Frank, before we get to taking a look at these Laurel Stakes, I just want to tie into these 4 stakes from Saturday and kind of an overarching topic. Boy, the stakes action for the last couple of months down at Laurel has been really nice. They tie a bunch of stakes together, and maybe one weekend there won't be any stakes, but then the next couple of weekends there's multiple stakes action. And I just think it seems to me, you look at Laurel, and I compare it to a track like Parks. They've got the slots money over there, and you barely ever see a weekend stakes. But over at Laurel, you see some nice weekend stakes action like we'll take a look at in just a moment. But I think it signifies, we've talked about it before, but that 10-year agreement going back about a year ago, and the fact that it really seems like a nice resurgence down in Maryland.
Yeah, I think you've hit it there, Seth. I mean, there's a real, there's a feeling here in Maryland that we've got the slots money, and this is important to us, but that we need to invest it. We need to, really think about how to build this product back up and how to put Maryland. For decades, Maryland was the king of the Mid-Atlantic region, and it sort of fell on hard times over the last 10 years. And now there's a feeling of, okay, now we have the tools to compete with our nearby neighbors. Let's try to do that. Let's try to put Maryland racing back where it used to be. And so that's really what they're doing. And I think, as you say, you contrast that with, say, Parks, which has a ton of money, and it all goes into overnights, and they run very few stakes. And I think it's hard to build interest in a product when there are no sort of spikes in it, when it's just the same thing day after day.
Yeah, and it's hard to grab media attention if there's not the punctuation on the sentence every once in a while. So hats off to Laurel, and again, nice stakes card on Saturday. We'll delve into that right now. Kicking things off with a fun little short field, but a fun little 3-year-old race now. The Frank Whiteley $100,000 purse, 7 furlongs. We're going to take a look at the stretch run. A little bit of an upset. 6-1 Germaniac is going to get it done over the heavy 40-cent to the dollar favorite Jesse the Marine. Jesse the Marine looked like this horse would be tough, but I talked with my partner yesterday and loose on the lead, Steve Bick, and he thought this Marylander is coming up to be an interesting key race because this horse, Germaniac, comes out of it. Running second, the big favorite, Jesse the Marine, came out of it. And also classic Jack and Roll, who ran second in the Jerome, came out of that one. But the Maryland turning out to be very productive. Germaniac, though, nice little upset winner on Saturday in the Frank Whiteley.
Yeah, this was a race that, the way it ended up playing out, particularly after, Tim Tulloch brought in 2 horses, Pax Orbis and Germaniac, and then he took Pax Orbis out. And the way it shook out, Germaniac basically had the lead all to himself. J.D. Acosta, who was aboard, is adept at getting horses out of the gate and onto the lead, and he does that here. And Jesse the Marine's best effort really probably was back in the Lewis, when he made a big run from last in the late stages of the race to just get up at the wire. And he didn't get that kind of setup, that kind of pace where he could run into. And Germaniac, he had a really nice setup, Germaniac, and he really took advantage of it. So that was a really good effort. I think Jesse the Marine was a little bit of a disappointment here, but Germaniac looks like a horse. I have not yet talked to Tim Tulloch about it, but I imagine that the Miracle would at the end of the month at Laurel, which is the first of the route preps for the Preakness locally. I would imagine that's on their agenda.
And I'll just add one thing before we move on. I think this race perhaps flatters joint custody a little bit. Obviously, both of these, the first two finishers, were behind joint custody last time in that Marylander. But I touched on it earlier. You go to a Saturday down at Gulfstream Park, the Spectacular Bid, the upset winner there, Just Called Kenny. In his previous race, he had finished behind joint custody too. So I'm going to be really interested to keep my eyes on joint custody going forward. I think he may be a little more sprint meant, but I think, you got a nice 3-year-old this time of the year. They'll probably go out and test him a little bit, and I'll be interested to see what happens because, as noted, a couple of races over the weekend seem to flatter joint custody.
Yeah, I think that's right. And they think he'll stretch out. The issue with joint custody, according to Jerry Rubb, is that he's basically lazy in the mornings. And Jerry's concern is that it's hard to get a horse to go around a ground if he won't work hard in the mornings. And so that's going to be the question for that one. But he's got the talent, he's got the breeding. And, when I talked with Wesley Ho after he had won the Maryland Juvenile Championship, Wesley was quite sure that he would go on to longer distances. So it'll be fun to see if he stretches out. There's another nice little Maryland bred running locally called It's a Bang, who actually finished ahead of joint custody in 2 different races and then scratched out of what would have been their 3rd meeting, who may also be an interesting horse. So there's a couple of nice horses locally that, they're sort of fringe horses at the moment, but as you know, things change pretty quickly with the 3-year-old set.
Yeah, well, just look at Just Called Kenny. They were looking for an allowance race, couldn't find it, so went in that stake on Saturday and looked pretty convincing down there. So that probably flatters the other Marylanders. All right, let's move on now to next on the card on Saturday, at least stakes-wise, was the Marshua $100,000 purse for 3-year-old fillies. The logical favorite in here was Gracer for Anthony Dutrow. A couple of 80 buyer figures showing on the past performances, including the Maiden Breaker at Saratoga, and then a nice little stakes race last time over at Penn National. And that one gets it done the way she was supposed to. Gracer, the number 2 horse, will win. The surprise in here, though, running second in this race with a little bit of a closing effort, the number 3, Jump 2, 42-1. Only the second career start. So Jump 2 completes what winds up to be a $57 exacta with a $3 horse on top. So again, in this race, Jump 2, as we see closing here into second place, the surprise.
Yeah, I think that's right. This race, when you look at the stretch drive, you say, oh, Gracer thrashed them, which she did, but this was an interesting race because she really had to run in the early stages of this race. Jones and for Jerry absolutely came out with a run and she was on, was being pushed right from the gate by Abel Castellano. They went through the quarter in 21-4. They went through a half in less than 45. And if you're not familiar with Laurel times, that is blazing fast. Horses don't run that fast at Laurel. And by contrast, for example, 2 races earlier in the Whiteley, Germaniac went 47 and change for a half mile. So these horses went really fast early. Jones and for Jerry was out of gas after that, finished 3rd. But a nice little run from Jump 2 to get into the exacta for sure. But I think this was a really nice effort from Gracer. I thought she was probably the star of the day with this effort.
Yeah, and again, it's a Tony Dutrow horse, 4 career starts so far with a Maiden Breaker up at Saratoga on the resume. So this will be one to look forward to in that 3-year-old filly division, see where they go next. All right, let's look out now at the Nellie Morse $100,000 purse. Fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up. They will go a mile and a 16. We'll pull up the video here. It will be the number 1 Forenzi Feeling We had Dave Rodman on Thursday and looked out at the stakes action, and Dave liked Frenzy Feeling. Frenzy Feeling went off as the second choice at 9-5, 3-2 favorite. Welcome Guest, the 3-horse, will wind up finishing 5th in here. So it's number 1, Frenzy Feeling, over number 5, Celtic Katie. Your thoughts on the Nellie Morse?
Well, I mean, I think this was something of an oddly run race. I mean, all 6 of them were in each other's pocket for, the first quarter, first half mile. Welcome Guest, I think, was obviously the disappointment here. She was 7-5 on the morning line. She went off 3-2 and was nowhere to be seen at the end. It was a good effort from Ferenc Feeling. I thought Celtic Katie, who made a lot of the running here, was on the lead for quite a while at 9-1, really ran a nice race, but Ferenc Feeling was tons the best here.
And it was Victor Carrasco, again, going to be interesting to see how things shake out when the Eclipse Awards are handed out. Seems like he's the front runner, though, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, he had a monster year, and it's kind of neat. He led all apprentices in wins and earnings this year, but he didn't have, or in 2013, but he didn't have a stakes win until Saturday. That was his first one.
So, oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's kind of a neat. It took him a while, He was winning 3 races a day, but no stakes. But now he's got his first day.
And of course, people should, particularly if they're viewers who are maybe a little bit new to the game, apprentices don't get the allowance in stakes action, so that may play into it. He may not get quite the same opportunities in stakes that he gets in the everyday races.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. And he really has been riding 7-8 races a day at Laurel and winning 2 or 3 of them. It's been sort of an insane year. There's kind of an interesting thing happening at Laurel right now with the riders, where there's a whole bunch of good apprentices getting a ton of mounts, and not very many journeymen getting a lot of mounts. So the other day, I think 8 of the 9 races at Laurel were won by bug riders. So Victor's certainly at the top of that class, but there's a couple other good ones here, including Jetty Toledo and Trevor McCarthy.
Yeah, I was interested when the year-end stats came out for Maryland. As you say, Carrasco led the apprentices in 2013 nationwide, but he started the season down in Florida. So Trevor McCarthy wound up to be the leading jockey in 2013, Maryland overall.
Yeah, and he lost some time himself because he got injured.
Yeah.
He broke his arm and was out for a while. But he's another one. He's a promising young rider. I mean, he certainly looks like he's going to do some good things. And a lot of these kids, these bug riders this year, are really more mature than you expect bug riders to be in terms of how you handle a horse, not panicking in a tight spot, waiting for your openings. And that makes a huge difference, as you know, when you get a rider who will relax and wait for the right moment, that he passes that on to the horse, and that makes the horse run better and gives you a better chance to take advantage of your opportunity. So
Yeah.
It's a pretty neat thing to see.
Yeah, Maryland, longtime breeding ground for good apprentices, and continues to do so. All right, finally on the stakes action from Saturday, the Fireplug $100,000 race, 4-year-olds and up, going 3/4 of a mile. We'll watch the stretch run. It will be the number 4 Broad Rule getting it done as the 12-1 second longest price on the board. Number 8, Service for 10, will finish second as the 8-5 second choice. 6-5 favorite, number 5 for Smiley, runs 5th. But again, we're watching under the wire, the number 4, Broad Rule, win. 12-1, second longest price on the board. And Frank, sometimes there's a horse for a course. Broad Rule, it may be horse for a stake.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Debbie. He doesn't win much, but he's now won this race 2 years in a row. And both times are long odds. I think he was 16-1 last year. He's 12-1 this year. Yeah, this was sort of an interesting race. I mean, it was interesting ahead of time. The 8-horse, the favorite, I guess he wasn't the favorite, but Service for 10 is a horse who's now trained by Mike Giuralis. Mike was Damon Dilladovico's longtime top assistant. Damon trained Warrior of the Roses. Those two just split, although amicably. They're like high school buddies. I mean, they've been friends forever. But Mike went out on his own, and Service for 10 was the first horse to run with him as the named trainer. And he nearly wins the race here. So kind of an interesting little story there. And Damon's horse, Warrior of the Roses, runs 3rd. So they go 2-3. And they might have gone 1-2, except for Smiley, who was the big favorite, who has a consistent problem of bearing out around the turn, bore out around the turn. And he did it a little at first, which let Warrior of the Roses slip through on the rail to make the lead. And then he did it a lot after that, which opened a huge opening for Broad Rule to come through and get the money, and floated Service for 10 out. It might have cost Service for 10 to win in the process.
And we should also note Strapping Groom, who was going to be interesting in there, wound up scratching out of that event. But as noted, Broad Rule now 2 years in a row, 12-1 this year, 16-1 last year. So just tuck that away in your pocket, folks, because if Broad Rule shows up in the fire plug next year, particularly at double-digit odds, it may be worth taking a second look at. Frank, we got to wind things up this morning, but as always, we appreciate the visit. Again, Maryland racing seems to be on a nice resurgence, and some of these nice stakes Saturdays are fun to take a little bit of a look at, particularly with this 3-year-old division that, again, just seems to be kind of interesting down there in Maryland. And as we move forward and some of these horses move out of their barometer races and the waters will get a little deeper, I think they're going to be fun to watch at some of the various venues. But the other stakes action was interesting as well. But Frank, always appreciate the visit. And again, tell people to go over to theracingbiz.com for all the coverage of racing news on the Mid-Atlantic region. Frank, thanks.
Thank you so much, Seth.
Frank Vespi from theracingbiz.com. A little earlier, we were joined by Mike Penna, Horse Racing Radio Network. Again, nice stakes recap with a weekend that, it's a little bit of a lull, really, but I thought there was some very nice stakes action from around the country. We are now on the Triple Crown Trail. Again, there were more barometer races this week, but I think some of the horses that are coming out certainly gave their connections enough confidence to continue on, and they could turn out to be something. Again, Mighty Brown down at Tampa, I think Noble Moon could be interesting, and I think a couple of these races, again, flattered that winner from Laurel last week, Joint Custody. So we'll keep our eyes on some of those horses going forward. That will wrap things up for Racing Across America for this Monday morning. We're here every Monday through Friday from 10 until 11 a.m. 9 a.m. is the Handicappers Report. You can tune in again for that first thing tomorrow morning. But as always, we hope we gave you some good information there about an hour earlier. So cash some tickets this afternoon. We'll see you again tomorrow.
You're watching OTB TV, a service of Capital Off-Track Betting.